In order to join a gang, this 13 or 14-year-old boy had to go kill someone to prove that he was worthy to join a gang.
Oh my God.
And this story was one of reconciliation and atonement. The killer was released from prison, and with the father of the murdered boy, would go to schools and tell their story of how we need to come up with a way of rite of passage for young boys, instead of the gang coming along and saying, hey, we've got this rite of passage for you. Do this and you can join our gang.
Join us in the realm of holistic human, where we explore the essential elements that empower us to flourish, revealing our hidden potential and nurturing our growth.
So I was reading Midnight Mystic, Conversations with Sadhguru, and then, there was another small revelation, I believe. Or is it okay if I ask you to introduce yourself?
Of course.
Okay.
So my name is Jeffrey Arnio, and I don't know if you need the surname or not, but my name is Jeffrey, and I am in San Diego, California. I'm originally from the state of California and have lived half of my life on the west coast of the United States between Oregon and California. And about 25 years of my life has been in 6 different countries, mostly in Europe, between Spain, Italy, France, and also living in Mexico and the Philippines. I work for the US government's National Park Service, and I love to travel, and I've been a lifetime seeker of truth, knowledge, and especially the mystery schools. Lots of interests.
Lovely, lovely. And in this episode of the Holistic Human Podcast, we're going to explore with Jeffrey, who is a keeper of wisdom, actually, to me, and also my guide in a certain way. And today we're going to talk about rituals, the reason for rituals, and the power of rituals. And so happy to have Jeffrey on board with us. Recently, we had a panel discussion with Jeffrey and 2 other panelists talking about strange worlds, esoteric traditions around the world. And I'll drop the link in somewhere near this video if you'd like to watch that. And now, thank you, Jeffrey, again for your introduction. And you introduce more the academic part of things. Would you like to introduce your spiritual side of things, what traditions you in, and then it will lead into what we're going to talk about?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I would say that with my travels going overseas from the age of 16, it's actually going to be 40 years this year that I first lived overseas or outside of the United States in Mexico. My spiritual path started at that time when I was exposed to the Mexican culture, but also the Mesoamerican indigenous culture at the same time. And that led me to places like Teotihuacan, the pyramids outside of Mexico City, the Anthropology Museum in Mexico City, and learning about the deeper history that here in the United States we don't necessarily learn in high school, only in the university if we choose to go into that particular area of study. Unbeknownst to me, that really started an interest to know more about places of interest, from Egypt to places like Stonehenge and the Incan Empire, Machu Picchu, and other places of significance, cultural and other around the planet. And so that slowly built up a curiosity that took me from places to study about sacred geometry and about plant medicines, from the jungles of the Amazon, from ayahuasca to the Native American traditions of peyote and mescaline of Mexico and North America, that it was lost in the European traditions as religions took hold and really snuffed out a lot of those esoteric cultures and traditions. There's been a spiritual growth and rebirth, I would say a renaissance of interest in the esoteric cultures. And I would definitely put myself in that category. Excuse me. I did get to meet my great grandmother maternal great-grandmother who was half Cherokee, although I don't claim any Cherokee connection because I'm just so removed from those traditions, and I didn't grow up on the reservation in Oklahoma or in the Carolinas where the Cherokee came from. But I did get to meet her when I was a very small boy, and it left a real profound impact on me. So I would say spiritual practice is really through meditation and core universal shamanism based off of Michael Harner's Institute for Shamanic Studies and exploration of the unifying elements of shamanism around the world.
Thank you again for explaining that. And then I would like to ask that tying a lot of these universal shamanic principles will be rituals and also ceremonies. And these are things that, one, bind people together. Two, it's the setting the stage, holding that space for healing to happen or things to happen. We'd like to elaborate more about what are the significance of rituals.
Yeah, ritual is really important, even though Western society especially has lost a lot of its connection with ritual. There's still ritual in everything we do by nature. Death, birth, marriage, these are steeped in ritualistic elements that are embedded in how we treat the arrival of new life or grieving the loss of a loved one after they pass, or just committing love vows or vows, to in front of friends and family to say that from this point forward, when you get married with someone, you are saying, this is now who I will be. I will be of this coupleship. And so ritual has played such an important part in the evolution of human beings from the very beginning. In fact, you and I met on a trip to Egypt, to Old Kemet, and the vestiges of those incredible temples and ruins show just to what extent ritual was embedded in ancient civilizations. And a lot of these remnants of ancient civilizations all point to an outward-looking observation of the universe, aligned with the celestial events from equinoxes and solstices, the alignments of certain planets and stars, which immediately that turned into a spiritual and inward journey. Someone said recently, and I think it was a friend of a shaman I was listening to, explain the technology of the medicine wheel, and that it's all nonsense. Ritual is nonsense. In other words, it's not something we make sense with our brains. It's something that's inherent deeper inside of who we are as living beings. Joseph Campbell, again, he talks about one of the first recorded historical burial grounds of humans was a very ritualistic skull with a couple of the bones placed in a crossword pattern in front of the skull to recognize something has happened to that person of that clan, of that tribe. They passed from this living, breathing body into a realm that we no longer have connection with. But there was an acknowledgement that something happened. That's ritual.
Yes. And my understanding is, I would say, more modern in a sense that, and this is where I want to know a little bit more about all the, and I'm sure the audience wants to know about the more tradition, the older forms and the origins of some of the rituals. And just like to mention a little bit like the ritual of death, the funeral. It's not something for the dead. It's actually something for the living. It's for them to step across that threshold and to come into acceptance within themselves that this has happened. And then let's together in a community, it's easier to go through than to do it alone. And I feel that is the function of a ritual, of a funeral. Whereas also I'd like to bring up that in many cultures, there's this ritual of the coming of age ceremony, where whether you're 16, you're 18, and you get different types of rituals, lion hunting maybe in Africa, or jumping off the tower in Vanuatu, which gives you that that badge of honor to say that you have become an adult, and henceforth you have new responsibilities, and also you are a different person now. You now have other roles to play in society. And I don't know whether it's the same observation for you, Jeffrey, but I find that nowadays many tweens and teens and young adults are lost because there's no ritual other than the driving license that they get to say that, oh, the ability to smoke and drink, and now you're an adult, go and do all these things. But
Absolutely.
it's not the same. And then they just feel that, oh, what does this mean? And nobody is there to guide them and tell them. Yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think that really points to an issue, especially in a society like the United States, where there's a lack of initiation ritual or rite of passage. We find that taking away that rite of passage in a community setting, something will fill that vacuum, will fill that space. And I've heard here in San Diego, a father of a son who was killed, who reconciled with the murderer in prison and forgave the killer for the death of his son. And what happened was the killer was sent out to commit a rite of passage, to join a gang. In order to join a gang, this 13 or 14-year-old boy had to go kill someone to prove that he was worthy to join a gang.
Oh my God.
And this story was one of reconciliation and atonement. The killer was released from prison, and with the father of the murdered boy, would go to schools and tell their story of how we need to come up with a way of rite of passage for young boys, instead of the gang coming along and saying, hey, we've got this rite of passage for you, do this and you can join our gang.
Yeah.
So you're absolutely right that there is a lack of rite of passage. For a young girl going into her pubescence, puberty, something physically happens where she's now capable of providing life, which doesn't mean that there shouldn't be a rite of passage, a ritual around it, to better understand and accept where that young woman is now in her life. There still should be something to support that in the community or in the tribe or clan of people. But I've heard it said that in Australia, the Aboriginal communities would take an 8-year-old boy kicking and screaming as they are dressed up in their war paint, and the little boy's clinging to the mom and to the women, and they take the boy and they force him into a cave or a hut, and they all take turns cutting their arms and pouring a little bit of blood in a communal bowl. They circumcise the boy at 8 years old. The boy must then drink from this communal blood that the men also provide nourishment. Now the boy is part of the hunters, and that boy can no longer go back to the mother and the women. He has now been accepted into the group of men. And you're absolutely right. We're missing that in our society today.
And we talked about the death. We talked about adolescence. I think the ritual that we still hold, thankfully, is about birth, because we have the baby showers, we have the different types of rituals to welcome the baby. And what would make that more, and I think it's more and more there. Nowadays, we also have death doulas, we have the birth doulas, we have the death doulas, we have and some of the doulas, especially in the hypnobirthing world, are also talking about preventing birth trauma even before it begins. And I feel that is some progress in the sense of like our understanding of this circle of life, wheel of life, or the beginning and the end, and we're giving more reverence to it and not taking it as something physical or mechanical process. And I find solace in that. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. I know there's the Czech scientist, therapist, who has been many years living in California, Stanislas Graf, who did a lot of work around the traumas from birth. And he actually used LSD as a way to have patients go in and have regressive memories come forth, the traumas from birth come forward, and did a lot of writing about the rite of passage being birthed into the world and how it imprints all of us. But Stanislas Graf has done a lot of work in that regard.
Oh, okay. I will put this in the video comments down below if the audience would like to research more. And just a little segue into the role of LSD, MDMAs, and maybe perhaps ketamine. And a lot of people feel that psychedelics, plant medicines are not to be, they are just drugs. But currently, the psychedelic renaissance has seen MDMA, ketamine being into mainstream, not to say mainstream, but then they are now at the therapeutic stage of treating PTSD of war veterans and also other forms of psychiatric illnesses, and the results are really promising. And you can find that not only in the US, in Australia, even in a very tightly run of society, which is in Singapore, they actually have intranasal ketamine to help with depression. I think that's moving forward as well. And to deny people the use of this, which could really heal, would be a disservice. That is my own personal opinion for the audience. Yeah.
Yeah, and I can speak personally to ketamine and other psychedelics that I've used for my own PTSD. And my caveat is, of course, to follow up. First of all, consult your physician before trying any psychedelics and making sure that anyone interested in doing psychedelics is doing their due diligence in terms of investigating who they will be working with in a safe and careful environment. But speaking from my own personal experience, I know that what is really key is the experience itself, but even more important is the integration of those experiences. I think that's where the real work is. If you're just having the experience, you're seeing beautiful lights or colors, perhaps with ayahuasca or psilocybin. You don't really have the colors and the visual effects with ketamine, but if you're not following up with integration and finding a way to bring those lessons forward into your daily life, then personally, and this is just my personal opinion, I really think that it's a waste of time if you're not willing to put the work in to integrate it into your life.
Yes, taking the plant medicine is the easy part. And then if we do not do the integration work, it would just be a party drug. It would just to get the high, to get the, oh, okay, I see all those lights. Ooh.
Yes.
And then after that, nothing happens. The life doesn't change. There's no healing done. And then, yeah, as they say, it's a waste of time. And then we come in shamanic rituals. We would use some of this plant medicine. And could you tell us a little bit more about the ritual behind the use of plant medicine, and tell us a little bit more about the integration work so that our listeners could understand more?
Yeah, so when I decided to go to the Amazon in Peru for an ayahuasca experience with a confirmed shaman or curandero, ayahuasquero, that's someone who is qualified with his people, his tribe, to actually work with the ayahuasca plants. There are two plants that are cooked into a tea and served, but it's served with the ritualistic circle. And it's very important that the screening is done to make sure that people are physically and psychologically ready and able to take that medicine, which is very important, that you're following the strict diet, you're not mixing alcohol or other drugs, that you're not on any depressive antidepressants and certain medicines that would make it dangerous to take ayahuasca. But the ritual itself, it is said that the icaros, or the sacred songs that the shamans sing, are songs that are taught to the ayahuasqueros by the plants. The plants gift these songs, and they are sung through the taking of the ayahuasca tea. And you're in the dark. Most of the time you're taking ayahuasca at night in the jungle, and you are hearing the noises of the jungle around you. And so the ritual is to really have the dark night of the soul. And grandmother ayahuasca, as she is known, comes to you and works with you and gives you not necessarily what you want, but what you need. It's always followed up, or should be followed up, if it's a good, respectable person that you're working with. The next day, you come back together in circle and have a sharing integrative session. And the shaman or ayahuasquero will follow up with a synthesis of what was shared. Because you're having an individual experience within a collective circle. So there's both the individual journey, but there's also a theme that usually arises from the group that you're with. And the music is exquisite and really helps. It is said that the songs, the Icaros, are so the ayahuasca, the medicine, is like the Amazon or the tributaries of the Amazon River flowing through the jungle. The songs, or the Icaros, are the canoe with the shaman guiding you down those river tributaries.
That is analogy.
Yeah.
And this integration, post-journey integration, whichever journey that you do, whether it's your own soul-searching journey, whether it's a plant medicine ceremony, what we did in Egypt after visiting and doing our work, and having Deva lead us in an integration journey or session was really helpful, because it allows double, triple, quadruple the epiphanies that we could have if we went at it alone. And I think that's the circle of wisdom for me, the integration circle. Yeah. And is there more towards the shamanic ritual? Is there more you'd like to elaborate about?
The shamans are said to have been the original psychologists, therapists, performers, jesters. They have the coyote or playful medicine that they bring to the community, the healers. So they play these original storyteller roles as well. And there are stories being told through these songs. So that is an aspect of the ritual, of the ceremony, that is also very important. And if you're open and receiving to this, then there's a lot more information that is being shared and received.
And me and Jeffrey were talking about Mufasa, Lion King, just now. And this storyteller, this healer, this oracle, this Rafiki, if you're familiar with the Lion King. And just I think this time Rafiki's character was truly fleshed out about how he was already much connected beforehand. And it explains his role in the Lion King, why he was the one who anointed Simba, and then was the announcer of everything. And that's the role of a shaman. And just again, sorry, too many segues today, but I've been talking a lot about shaman sickness and also the wounded healer in reference to people asking me that why are you doing all these things, and why do you have all sorts of things from hypnosis to vipassana meditation, mindfulness, NLP, to learning about shamanic medicine, to learning about qigong. I was saying that no, it's not for that extra accreditation, for acknowledgement, but it's the things, the tools, the skills that I needed on my own personal healing journey. And it's because, and although I may not be fully cured in that sense, but I am healed through this journey. And whatever I've gotten myself into and out of, and now becomes a part of my toolbox, I can now help serve people who come across my path. And I think that was the lesson, and that was the journey that I had to take to be who I am today. And I'm so thankful for all those experiences. And although I say that because I have a very superficial understanding of what a shaman sickness is, or what a wounded healer is, and maybe just one more sentence before I hand it over to Jeffrey, is that it is said that this shaman, how were they elected in the tribe, was that they had this incurable condition, and that required this shaman to journey around to find all the cures, and when they eventually come home, they have now all the tools and knowledge necessary to help others within the tribe. Yeah, and I'd like you to explain for my own understanding as well.
Oh, I think that's brilliant, the way you led into that. Yeah, the wounded healer is really a good way to describe the shaman, as it's usually someone who has something happen to them at an early age, struck by lightning or burned by fire. Something usually happens, or they are recognized for having an ability to see beyond what normal people see, or a telepathic ability, or some sort of clairvoyance. And an elder shaman usually takes that individual, could be a boy or a girl, or could be at an adolescent age, and says, "You're going to train with me." Usually it's a person within a group, tribe, or clan that is selected and then trained for many years to take on that role. And I like that you have selected all of these pathways of healing and training to gain perspective and knowledge. So when we talk about wisdom, it is an accumulation of both knowledge and experience. And that allows, like sacred geometry, the more complex the geometry, the more perspective you have. And all roads lead to the same place, but there are infinite paths to get there.
Yeah, truly. All roads lead to Rome. And we were talking about, is there a role for, since you brought it, is there a role for sacred geometry in rituals? Yeah, have you come across?
For sure, sacred geometry are the so-called building blocks of everything. So before anything is made material, it is in the spirit realm, or some like to say source, God, whatever transcendent word you want to use to describe what is beyond the limits of language, to describe what gives everything life. Everything was first thought of before it was manifested. Everything is in that grain or that seed, if we like to say the acorn. The full meta sequoia tree is inside of that small seed. The potential is already in there. It's built into it. And sacred geometry is the very base, the basic building blocks of the universe. And how did they know? How did Plato know the shape, and how did he draw those platonic solids? If you want to break it down in that way, he didn't have access to atomic microscopes to be able to look down and see what earth, water, air, and fire elements looked like. And the ether, right? The fifth element. It's fascinating to me how today science and spirituality are coming and overlapping today. When you listen to people like Greg Braden or Bruce Lipton or Joe Dispenza, and science and spirituality are really finding common language.
Yeah, and I can't wait to look more expansion on that aspect of things. And coming back to rituals, and beyond the shamanic rituals we talked about in your many travels and journeys across the world, have you come across a particular ritual that you feel would be beneficial, that some of us could integrate into our personal lives, and then it would be something practical for our users to learn from and to gain from?
Something that everyone has access to would be crystals or stones. This is something that not everyone is necessarily attuned to using or can feel the energy. But if you sit with crystals and stones long enough, you will start to feel a different energy or energetic. Right now, for example, I'm working with cacao or cocoa. It's in its raw, thick brick form. It's single-sourced origin, organic chocolate, the brick that comes from Mexico and Peru. And I'm doing a 6-month journey with cacao. Just very just hot water, a little bit of honey, and really doing a ceremony with it. It's a heart-opening medicine. Cacao, crystals, if people are interested in looking at the medicine wheel from the North American perspective, but North America isn't the only place on the globe that used the medicine wheel. There are different versions of the medicine wheel around the planet. Some in Europe and elsewhere used a circular stone structure like Stonehenge or Göbekli Tepe in Turkey. But you're saying on a more practical level, there are ancient sites in places like Cambodia and elsewhere in India that use these ancient structures for the alignment of celestial events like the solstices. But going back to the medicine wheel, that is all about being present with the seasons and the changing of the seasons, the time of the year, and being more deeply grounded in the present. It is a technology that is used to call in the directions and the ancestors, the present, as well as the future generations to come. There's a lot of information on how to use the medicine wheel. But I would start simple. I would start with the crystals and the stones that are available to all of us.
Thank you for your input, Jeffrey. And my personal opinion, a ritual that all of us have access to is a priming ritual for us every morning. And this priming ritual is to prime your conscious as well as your subconscious mind to be at your peak flowing state, because we are always inundated by outside influences, some of them positive, some of them negative. And if we are not aware of all of these influences, we become that floating boat in the very rough seas. But if we could create a morning ritual for ourselves, for example, that mindful 5 minutes, listening to that song that perks you up in the day, even we talk about morning rituals. Morning rituals could include like brushing your teeth, but occasionally use it with your left hand because you create new neural connections, neurogenesis. These are the simple things that we can do. And beyond that, something that I totally advocate everyone to do is that within this ritual, it's not about adding, sometimes it's subtracting. And what do you subtract from? For the first half hour of the day, do not turn on any of your electronic devices, because you want to maintain and extend that alpha state that you're naturally in for as long as possible. So keep all the electronic devices away, because once you turn it on, whether it's social media, whether it's text, it started putting responsibility, anxiety, worry into you, and just disrupts your day. And if you could utilize that morning half an hour for fully utilize it, if you are kept in that state, you come up with creative solutions, you have more ideas, and then you can plan your day. You could use it to visualize your day. There's so many things you can do in that half an hour if it's not disrupted. And I would say personally, that's the morning ritual that we can all incorporate. Would you like to add anything to that, Jeffrey?
So here is a good book reference, and I was going to add this, is keep a dream journal. That's accessible to everyone. Before you do anything, before turning on your phone, you could turn off your alarm, but then go immediately to your journal. And before you even start thinking about, just sit with the dreams, the residual memories of your dreams that are with you, and begin to write them down in a journal. Don't try to write it in an interpretive form. Don't try to interpret your dream. Just write what you remember in a descriptive form and get as much on the paper. And as you build up a practice, more and more of your dream will become available. You can practice and work up. But Carlos Castaneda, in this book, The Art of Dreaming, really talks about various techniques, how to go further in this altered state. Some people even think that dreaming is more real than the awakened state. But that is something that is accessible to everyone as an easy ritual in the morning, especially before turning on the phone and looking at the news.
And yeah, I love this idea of the dream journal. And for many of us who do not remember our dreams, sometimes I do, and depending on which stage of sleep do you come out from. And if you come out of the last stage of sleep, the last 90-minute cycle has the longest REM. That's most people remember their last dream. And would you have any tips or tricks that can help people remember their dreams better?
Sure. You can start by you can set the intention when you go to sleep is to tell yourself, I will remember my dream or dreams. You can also have that dream journal sitting right next to your bed so that in the middle of the night, I usually wake up between 3 and 4 in the morning, is to get into the habit of waking up at night and writing and then going back to sleep. But if you don't want to interrupt your dreaming, Carlos Castaneda has some really good techniques on how to go further, even into lucid dreaming, which is, of course, being in a dream, knowing that you're dreaming, and then manipulating your dream while dreaming.
Mm,
So there are various techniques that you can use.
nice. And another segue about lucid dreaming. So one of the techniques is to a constant reminder during the daytime of looking at your hand, looking at your hand, looking at your hand until it becomes second nature. However, when you are dreaming, you find that, oh, my fingers are wavy. Now I know I'm actually dreaming. And do you utilize any particular techniques in that way?
Yeah, I've actually found myself in a dream, and I tried looking out a window to where I can project myself outside of that window while my dream person is still inside a space. And then I'm projecting my dream being into another space, or trying to go into another dream. That's another technique you can try. So you're lucid in your first dream, and then that yourself goes into a sleeping or dreaming state to have a dream within a dream. Yeah, it's a pretty advanced technique, but yeah, if you can get there, you're on the right road to improving your dream state.
That sounds so Inception.
Exactly.
uh, sounds like a very interesting tall order. Yeah, to me. Yeah. And would you like to add on more about our topic of rituals? Anything that we talked about, the shamanic rituals, we talked about our daily rituals, anything that you personally use that you can share with us, or something else that you've seen or experienced?
So I really try to be mindful and aware of those moments during the day when I am noticing nature and I'm both witness and participant in nature. I'm watching a hummingbird at the feeder, or a red-tailed hawk will come into our space, either on the house or in the backyard. And it's a timeless moment where there is the being in the presence of nature while being nature itself within that landscape. That is a ritual for me. So I really try to practice that on a regular basis. I try to do it daily and be present in the now, in nature. So when you start to build on that level of awareness and presence with self and in your environment, it really it enhances your ability to be, yeah, in the moment and in a present state.
That being present in nature. Personally, for me, something that I've been wanting to add to is a cloud watching. As in, whenever I'm outdoors, I'll just take 1 to 5 minutes looking at the sky, looking at the transforming cloud formations, trying to pick out whatever animals or whatever character I can see, and to just use that moment in time to, one, know that I'm just a very small thing among the universe, and then it gives perspective to the problems and issues that I have. Excuse me. Excuse me. And the other thing is that it helps me get centered, and also to be reminded that there is, I don't know, cloud watching for me takes on a particular significance. Sorry, another sneeze coming on. Particular significance in the sense that I'm reminded about how I'm being supported while I'm looking at clouds. There's no logic behind this, but it's more of a feeling, and then it's a reminder that sometimes I get hints, I get inklings. I wouldn't say messages or downloads looking at cloud. No, it's not to that extent, but I get inklings, I get a tiny bit of feelings, and I feel like reassurance. Yeah, and definitely being in nature should be a week, if not daily, should be a weekly ritual, because that's when, again, this sense of isolation, this sense of lack of communion. And it's a melody that makes us, how to say, lonely, isolated, alone. And the cure for that, rather than social media, is to get into nature and feel that how everything lives and breathes, and feeling that you are part of all that is. And that's a beautiful ritual to have, Jeffrey.
Beautiful.
And yeah, and we've come around an hour mark of our discussion. Yeah, would you have any last words of advice for our audience, Jeffrey?
But the only thing that comes to mind is that we are really steeped in a time on Earth that is focused on the individual, and how easy it is to get lost in being an individual in the mass of information, of all the things that we see on social media, in the news. It's easy to get lost and feel overwhelmed. We're feeling the effects of the fires just north of us in Los Angeles, and the friends and families who are affected by losing their homes. We feel the things that go on around the planet because everything is so available on our phones, in our pockets. Everywhere we go, we're bombarded with information. And even if we're not looking at an electronic screen, we feel the information coming at us. And my message would be is to remember this is Maya, in the Sanskrit term of illusion. There is no separation between us. We are all truly connected. And it's not because we're connected because we have social media. We really are one. We are part of a much bigger organism that is part of a bigger organism. It's infinite outside of us and inside of us, but we are all truly connected.
Lovely, beautiful parting message. And I think that could be the theme of our next discussion. And we'll begin with the mycelia network. And then we'll go on to trees, and we're talking about how we are all connected, the oneness, the connectedness, the transcendence. Yeah, let that be our future topic. I would love to have that with you, if you're game.
Always a pleasure.
Okay, and we've come to the end of this episode of the Holistic Human Podcast. I'm signing off on you over here. And thanks so much, Jeffrey, for your willingness to come on and for sharing your wisdom. Yeah.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
And
thank you for watching. Please hit the subscribe, like, and bell button to stay updated in our latest videos. Thank you.